welcome back to the Kevin Duragi Show. I am your host, Kevin Duragi. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year. Today, our special guest is Megan Greathouse. So before we get into Megan, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's just do a couple quick housekeeping things. If you haven't, go back. And in the very beginning, we do the monologues, which is the first 5 episodes, lays the foundation of all this life roadmap and all this personal drives to professional concept. We have 3 main tenets. The most important real estate is between your ears. Your personal drives your professional, and it's all about relationships. So if you go back to those first 5, we kind of underline that in a lot greater detail. Also, this year, episode 30 here about Eads Bridge, we laid down the foundation for what our theme is this year. So this is season 2, and we are following Dream, Forge, and Finish. So making some highlights of that as we go through our conversation today with Megan and the rest of this year. We do have some merch. So if you go to thekevinduragi.com, look for some of that merch there, T-shirts, koozies, things like that. So guys, great to have you. And let's get back to our conversation with Megan. All right, Megan Greathouse, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I've been excited for this for a while.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, yes. Absolutely. I think this is always fun. I can talk about real estate all day.
Good. So we got to speak on some panels together. We're both in St. Louis. We both have real estate investment groups. So you run the STL REI Happy Hour, and you're also on the STL Wire.
Correct. Yes. You got it. All the acronyms.
Love this stuff. Everybody loves acronyms.
Yes.
So tell me, what is this STL Wire?
Yep. So STL Wire stands for Women in Real Estate. So a few friends and I really wanted to bring together women in the St. Louis area and just give them a place to get together. I started that St. Louis REI Happy Hour. I think it's been 7 or 8 years ago now.
Oh, really?
And it's amazing. You know, I'm a woman who started this group, and usually I'm one of a few women in the room. We maybe make up 10% of the room most of the time. So we started STL Wire as a way to really encourage more women to come out. Sometimes they're just more comfortable surrounded by other women, and it's amazing. We have 50 women in the room every month pretty much. So it's the second Wednesday of every month, free open networking event with some education in there as well.
Excellent. And is this more of a thing for you to like feel good and bring people together? Are you sponsoring speakers, or how does that happen?
We have speakers every time, speakers or a panel or some form of education. But yeah, it's really a give back and a community builder. So we don't charge money. We don't, sometimes we'll bring in meeting sponsors to help just defray the costs of having the meeting, but it's not a moneymaker by any stretch. The intent is really just to build a good network, because I truly believe that good network, good people is what helps people rise above all sorts of challenges and get to the next level and just have good people around them that they can rely on too. So I think it pays its back in so many different ways over the long term that you don't even expect when you're starting things like this.
Yeah. What is it saying? Your net worth is equal to your network?
Yeah. Your network is your net worth. Exactly. Yeah. The people you surround yourself with. And it's similar to that saying about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. When I first started St. Louis REI Happy Hour, the one that's open to everybody, I was working my corporate job still, and I had bought my first rental. And I remember talking to a few people at the office about it. It just kind of came up in conversation, and their eyes just got wide, or they kind of glazed over, like they just had no interest. And I realized I needed to be around more people who were doing this if I wanted real estate to become my full-time thing in the future. So that's why I started these things. And it really does. I think it just supercharges whatever you're working on when you surround yourself by other people who are doing similar things.
Excellent. And what part of town is that in?
So we host the St. Louis REI Happy Hour at Rockwell Beer Company right now. And we have a website, stlreihappyhour.com. So you can always check that if we end up changing venues in the future. But that's down on South Vandevenner. And then St. Louis Wire currently is at Regazzi's in the Hill.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Are you a city girl?
No, actually, I live in Brentwood. And I'm not from St. Louis originally either, but there's just a lot of great venues in that direction.
Excellent. So let's talk about that. Where did you grow up? Because you're not native here.
No, I grew up everywhere but here. My dad is from St. Louis originally. He was one of 7 kids, the only one who really left permanently as a Marine. So I grew up as a military brat, moving every 2 to 3 years. It's funny that I ended up in real estate because I think we owned a house once my entire childhood for 3 years at one duty station. And then we moved on and, we lived overseas for all of my middle school and high school. So we really bounced a lot. And it was interesting. I didn't understand for a long time that not every family did this. I thought every parent, no matter what their work was, had to move every few years. So I think I was 10 when I realized, wait, none of my friends are moving. Why are we moving? But it was great. It taught me a lot of flexibility and adaptability. I learned how to meet new people and make new friends quickly. So I wouldn't trade it. But yeah, it was a fun and kind of unique upbringing.
Right. Talk about learning how to network a lot because you had to.
Yeah.
Which ones am I going to keep around longer, et cetera? How to make new friends. Wow.
Yeah. Fun. Absolutely. And I was the one too at some point who, when I saw the new kid come into a school, I was like, hey, come eat lunch with us today. You just understand what it feels like. So yeah, it does. It gives you a lot of kind of superpowers when it comes to people.
So do you think you're going to stay in St. Louis for a bit?
Oh yeah, I think I'll be here for a while. I have school-age children. So, I didn't mind moving around as a school-age kid, but their upbringing is different and their, background's a little different. So we'll stay in St. Louis. We've got a ton of family here and they're both in school and just growing. And we have their cousins 5 minutes down the road. So that's nice.
That's hard to leave.
It is.
So you talked about corporate job. So how did you get, what'd you do for like education? How'd you get into a corporate job?
Yeah, so I went to undergrad right out of high school. Ended up joining the Marine Corps myself as well. So
service.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So I was an officer in the Marine Corps, actually. I'd already done undergrad. So when I left the Marine Corps, I still had a GI Bill to use. So I was able to put that towards getting an MBA. I came back to St. Louis and went to WashU for my MBA. And then ended up at Nestle Purina Pet Care, doing marketing and brand management. So it was really great. I had a lot of great benefits from being in the Marine Corps, and then was able to go to a great job in the corporate world. But by the time I was having my first kid, I realized that was not going to be the life for me forever. So that's really when I started. I'd always been interested in real estate and personal finance, but that was when I really started looking into it in more depth. I think I had my first rental property purchased when she was 15 months old.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, by the time I went back from maternity leave, I was full on in research mode. And yeah, I had a few months after her first birthday, we had the first 4 family bought.
Goodness. Well done.
Yeah.
Just one of those to-do lists while you're sitting at home nursing a baby, huh?
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, when I was sitting at home with her, I was just happy as could be. I was on maternity leave, and it was when I came back from maternity leave and I realized I had to take her into daycare at 8 a.m. and then usually wasn't picking her up until about 5 or 5:30. By the time we got through the traffic, got home, got her fed, got her through the bath, it felt like I had, a half hour to spend with my kid. And so that was what really supercharged me. After she went to bed at night, I'd be doing my research and running numbers and trying to connect with people in the St. Louis area who could help me figure out this rental property thing.
Who was it that you found? Like, what were some early mentors of yours?
So really, I'm a reader and I like podcasts. So a lot of it was just kind of personal research and Googling things online. Google led me to biggerpockets.com, which a lot of people who are in real estate know that brand. And I was able to connect with people on that platform as well. So I actually met Peter McKercher of Mogul Realty through Bigger Pockets. And he was one of the first people in real estate who I sat down with. I think we planned for an hour-long coffee. He has a brokerage and agents who work under him, and they're very investor-friendly, but he also does construction and property management. So he kind of had the whole package. We planned an hour to sit down, and I'm a little chatty. So 2 hours later, we finally get up from coffee, and he says, I think you know more about my life than most people that I know.
That's awesome.
But they were great to work with. We built that rapport, and he knew I was serious. I had funds ready from, I had deployed in the Marine Corps, and I saved a lot of those funds for something like this. And I had good credit, and I was kind of ready to go. So he knew I was serious, and they started showing me properties the very next day or two. I think we were seeing the first multifamily that I was interested in. And after running through a handful of those and running lots of numbers, I was able to close on something, I think, within a few months of sitting down with him.
So you started straight into the multifamily world.
Yeah, technically I did have kind of a dipping my toe in the water. When we bought our second house, we kept the first house as a rental just to see what we thought of being landlords. So we didn't buy that house with the intention of renting it out. But by the time we were moving, I kept it and had some renters in there for a couple years. And that just was kind of proof of concept for me. It wasn't a big money maker. There was way more equity in the house than there was cash flow coming out of it. I mean, of course, there's always more equity, but the return on our equity was so incredibly low. We were maybe cash flowing $70 a month when I actually figured out how to run the numbers correctly and ran those. So sold that eventually. But yeah, the first purchase that I made with the intention of being a rental was a 4-family.
Excellent. So you knew in the beginning you wanted to be in real estate, and then just listening to what you were saying, you're in corporate, so that means you have a W-2, you have savings. So basically, you had a pretty good runway. Was it one moment you're just like, you know what, F this world, I'm going for myself? Was it time with your kid that you're like, man, I just want more freedom? What was it that made you go full-time real estate?
Yeah, I think having my daughter was really the big kind of kick in the pants. But even before then, I recognized it when I was in the Marine Corps. And then again, when I was in corporate, I kept thinking, well, when I get there and I kind of get settled into this role, I'm going to feel good. It's going to feel really good. And then I'd get there and I'd settle in and I'd be doing well. And it still didn't feel quite right. I think I always had this itch to have more say over how I use my days. Being in an office from 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, knowing how many things I have in my life and my world to take care of, not just work, but also personal things and helping family members out and hobbies. I always felt like my time was so restricted by that 9 to 5, and time freedom means a lot to me. I don't even like to talk about financial freedom anymore as much as time freedom, because I think there's so many ways to achieve it. It doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar net worth necessarily, but you can find a way to take more of your time back into your control. And that was really what I wanted. In general, like I said, in the Marine Corps, I kind of always felt that itch, like, ooh, I need a little more freedom than I get here. And then
you probably don't have much
freedom
there
a ton. No, and I love travel.
Where you live, what you do, what time of day, you're probably very, very minimal of your own choices.
It's true. And I love travel. In the Marine Corps, you can't even take a weekend away. You can't go outside a certain boundary when you're active duty. You have to know that you're staying within that bounds. Otherwise, you have to get permission. So things like that, it just feels pretty restrictive, a little suffocating. And I really enjoyed my time in the service. So, not to naysay that, but I knew I wanted more freedom than that. And then even in the corporate world, I was making more money and I did have more freedom. I didn't have to ask for permission to go somewhere on a weekend, but still that kind of 9 to 5, 8 to 5, really, with some work travel, it's a lot of time. There are so many other things I wanted to be doing with my life also. And I do believe that there's probably a lot of time wasted in those kind of corporate environments as well. So all of that. And then I have this beautiful little baby and I feel like I'm barely seeing her. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. I was ready to figure out a way to exit corporate for good.
Good for you. So along this way, so you're married, you have one, soon to be 2 kids, right? And you also switched from W-2 income to full-time investor, right? So you go through this journey. What's next?
Yeah, well, so a lot of things. Our second baby was due in 2019. And in January of 2019 was when I left my job. He was due in August. So that was me kind of really getting out there. I was taking over management of all my rentals. I was looking for another project and working on that project. I mean, I had a massive renovation while I was in the hospital having my son. So, just fun times trying to build it all up. But yeah, by 2019, I was out of my corporate job, had the second kid. 2020 comes around and I definitely can have that shiny object syndrome sometimes. And I decided it would be really cool to have different types of income streams. So I started looking into franchises. And eventually my now ex-husband actually decided he would like to do whatever I was doing next, because he wasn't actually involved in the real estate. But as I was looking at franchises, he kind of wanted to see what that would be like. So we ended up starting a sign company together, a commercial sign and graphics company.
Oh, what was that called?
It's Horizon Sign Company. And we sold it in 2024, early 2024, and it's still going great. I mean, the couple who bought it is amazing, and I think they're really going to continue to build it. But it was a very interesting and fun experience, fulfilling experience to start something from the ground up like that, build a company and see it grow. And we grew top line and bottom line at the same time, and then we're able to exit. So that was really cool. But
sounds fun.
We also ended up at the end of that, went into the process of divorce, and not because of that, but that was how the timing worked out. And I'm finally in a place where I'm only focusing on one thing. I'm only doing real estate related things. So it's exciting for me this year in 2025 to really focus, because that's not always my strong suit, but I know that it's important and necessary.
I think being diligent and focus. Actually, diligent is one of the words that I have for the years. Like, be diligent, just period. Like, once you get into the world of entrepreneurship and kind of not inside the box thinking, oh my gosh, all the opportunities. You're like, oh, I could go this way. I could go. Like, it really does expand. And that's where, like, my wife is the one who, like, slaps my hand. Stop, like, go back to where, like, without that, I think it would be very, very difficult.
It's true. My word for 2025 is persistence too, because I think I'm very much a visionary. If you've heard of the visionary integrator thing, I love the new ideas. I love the concepts. I love to build out what something could be. But the day-to-day mundane stuff, this might be why I didn't do well in corporate. I mean, I did fine that I performed well. I just didn't enjoy it. But that stuff, eventually I'm kind of like, no, I don't want to do that. So this year I'm really focusing on, I need to make sure I've got that persistence on the little day-to-day stuff as well, because that's so important. Even though I'm excited about the big picture, that's the stuff that builds up to the big picture.
So I'm curious. So Megan, let me drill into this a little bit. So you got into real estate. You were good at corporate, right? You bought some rentals primarily, multifamilies, et cetera. You started and then sold a sign business, and then ex-husband. So with already a portfolio, like, you have assets, right? There's stuff going on. You have kids, you have properties, businesses. How did this all pan out? One of our underlining themes is the personal drives the professional. So here, that is a major relationship that is basically getting ripped up. How did that affect your business? How did that affect you, your self-esteem, et cetera?
Yeah. I mean, obviously divorce is huge. And we were married for a while too. It was almost 14 years. So that's an entire lifetime there that we were together, and things were building while we were together. So yeah, it was a huge process to figure out how we would split everything. I mean, just the fact alone that now I'm 50-50 with my kids. My whole intention with real estate was more time with my children. And now just based on how Missouri runs things, it's 50-50. And of course they have a good dad too. So I wouldn't want to take that away from him either. But yeah, so a lot of change. We did have to navigate the division of assets, and that took a lot of time because, fortunately for us, there were a fair amount to figure out. And I did build up all the real estate. So that was a big one for me. I wanted to keep all of the rental properties because that had been my baby. I did all the work on it, really. So we had built up the sign company as well. So fortunately, it worked out the timing wise that we had a big sale. So I was able to offset the real estate, all the equity in the real estate, with most of the funds from the sale of that sign company, as well as the primary residence we'd been living in. So I went out and bought a separate home about 5 minutes away. That's also a little bit closer to my sister. But yeah, I mean, 2024 it felt like a year of just raising everything that had been, everything changed. We sold a sign company, divorce, new house, helping the kids through that process, and we are both very dedicated parents. So we were very proactive about that part. I mean, we were taking them to counselors basically within weeks after we told them what was happening, not because they were showing signs that they needed, but because we wanted to be proactive. So 2024 was busy, lots of change. And yeah, you have to navigate it. I heard someone once say that some of the worst financial decisions you can make, they were listing them out, and like 1 or 2 on the list was divorce. But at the end of the day, the reason we're trying to make money is to support the life that you really want and the life that you are fully happy with, and where you feel like you're the best version of yourself. And so if you're in a relationship where you're not feeling that, then you have to take the financial hit and figure it out from there.
So you were able to keep the real estate side of it?
I kept all the rental properties, yes.
Okay, because I was going to say, man, that would be awful tough to...
Yeah.
Did you just assume the loans back, or...
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process now of I have to refinance some of them to get his name off of them. Yeah. Other ones we were able to just kind of drop him. It depended on the type of loan.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Did that hurt your real estate business, spending all this time playing with paperwork and legal stuff and all that?
Luckily, I mean, I've got a portfolio at this point and I have I manage it myself, but with kind of a small in-house team. So I have a virtual assistant as well as someone who's boots on the ground and really handles a lot of the day-to-day stuff that requires someone to be there in person. So just making sure that I was answering their questions and handling any issues they escalated to me, and not necessarily doing anything above and beyond that. Everything continued to run just fine. I wasn't able to build last year, of course, but I was able to keep everything running. So I wouldn't say it hurt it. It slowed growth, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have, divorce is super common now. And obviously being a woman, being in real estate, which are also two not as common things, then also divorce, like what was your mindset going through some of this? Like, how did you know that this was the right choice and that you're going to continue to grow? And not only just grow, how can you help others go through this process? What was your mindset through that process?
Gosh, yeah. It's a big question. I think going through anything like this will will shake you a little bit. It'll rattle you and make you question a lot of things about yourself. But I don't think I've ever questioned my abilities to take care of myself, to take care of my children, to decide I want to do something and then follow through and do it. There were a lot of distractions last year, so it slowed my ability to do some of those things, but it was never going to stop me. I think really the bigger things are when you're in a relationship and in one for so long too, and you do finally realize and admit to yourself, like, this is not the right choice. It's not the right path. You realize that there's this other part of your life. I was doing so well as a mother. I was doing well as a business owner, entrepreneur, real estate investor. And I realized there's this other piece where I was just kind of ignoring. I was ignoring things that I probably should have seen and known a long time ago. And it's hard because sometimes it's subtle, it's little things and you're so busy with everything else that you don't really pay that much attention. So I think that's really where the mindset was big for me, was thinking about, okay, how do I've always said I want to live a really intentional life full of, great experiences and happiness and love and enjoying all the people around me. So there is a piece of me that I was not doing that. There's a part of my life where I was not doing that to the full extent that I should have been. So yeah, it makes you stop and question how you do that well. I think business, I haven't questioned how I'll do in real estate. But I do need to, obviously, everything's kind of changed in my life. So I need to rethink about how I create that intentional life, how my time works, how my time with my kids works versus time when I'm on my own, how I kind of readjust all of that going forward.
Megan, you just kind of really opened up, I think, underlined a point. Like, we have this exercise, the snapshot, and there's three main relationships, right? Relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and relationship with things. Each one of these breaks out into a few more things, obviously. So right. Like yourself, it's health and wellness. So like, you look healthy and fit. So that's, you must be working on that, right? Mm-hmm. The mental stuff, so like reading books and podcasts, like you said, you're following. There's the concept of emotional stuff. So this is like taking time either to meditate or kind of taking care of yourself type stuff. So I don't know about that area. And then it's character, right? So I'm just looking at you and known you for a while. I mean, you have a lot of poise is a word. You have a lot of confidence, which I think goes back. I mean, I don't know if that goes back to your parents or to the military, but I mean, it seems like that is your yes is yes, your no is no in a lot of regard. Relationship with others. So we have 4 categories in that. So relationship with significant, so love life there. Intimate is another word, social, friends, etc. You have your family, so blood or otherwise, and then you have your relationship with God. It sounds like your family was good, these other components, and I'm already putting together all these things that are high for you. If I slide under and look at relationship with things, there's your career, right? There is finances. You have your environment. I'm not talking about hugging trees. It's like your cars, your house, just how you're put together, like the things around you. And then it's also relationship with the future, right? Your legacy. So I'm looking at these things, and it looks like a lot of things are going well, but it looks like an area that may not have been tended to much was the intimate relationship. Did I sum up, if I would have taken your snapshot last year, would I have summed up some of that well or reasonably?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's interesting because no one can be great at everything all the time, right?
Yeah.
But I think I felt like I was doing everything I should be doing, and that we were, life was really good in so many ways. But there's also just extenuating circumstances sometimes, and we were married while active duty, very young, very quickly. So, I think for me, I very much wanted to stand by that and push forward and make it work. And there's societal pressures too. And I don't know where that falls in all the things you just spoke about, but I tend to think of myself as not someone who worries too much what other people think. We all think about and worry what other people think, but I would say I'm on the lower end of the spectrum of worrying what other people think. But that was very much playing into my mindset for years and years and years. When there were issues in the past, and when there were discussions about me, is this right in the past? I think sometimes you can be misled based on fear of what other people will think, or what you think is the quote unquote right thing to do. Obviously, no one gets married wanting to get divorced, and I'm no exception to that. So it was, it was something that I realized I had probably not started the right way, and it had not grown in the right way. And so that was the thing that I was really, it wasn't working. Yeah.
I think was it one of our interviews or something I just read that talked about the single biggest decision in your life is who you marry, yes. Like who you spend your time with, right? Because if you think of the top 5 people that'll change it, like that's one that's all the time close proximity of a good relationship, right? You have some proximity. And then I look at some people and they're always together, and you're just like, gosh, that's annoying. Like there's no like individual time. It's everything is a couple.
Right.
And that's hard. Like, it's one of the things, like I look at my wife, I love my wife, but we could be together, we could be apart. Like there's some independence. Like I needed somebody who could be durable if I'm going to be gone for a while,
right?
And vice versa.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't be jealous because I'm a hugger, right? It's like, hey, there's just certain, I guess, roles and responsibilities and kind of trust. I think that falls into it. Cool. Now, man, how hard would it be? Because we have some other military people here, so obviously a Marine. Once you're a Marine, you're always Marine. You're never a retired Marine. My father-in-law is a Marine.
Yes.
But for a military veteran, do you think real estate investing is a good idea? Like if you were talking to a fellow veteran, or maybe they're still active duty, like, do you think this is something that they should be doing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I think real estate is something anyone should be doing, but I think that folks who are currently in or are veterans of the military have so many advantages as well. I mentioned earlier that I got to go to grad school for free because of the GI Bill. That's huge to be able to go to grad school for free. I mean, that was big for me. I was able to go into the corporate world and make 6 figures thanks to that. And I don't think I would have gone back to school had it not been for that, because I didn't want to take on a massive amount of debt. I had just, gotten myself out of the undergrad debt. And fortunately, I was able to do that fairly quickly. But yeah, that's a big risk to take on that amount of debt and hope that you can get yourself out of that and then still end up ahead. And so the fact that I had the GI Bill, that was massive for me. I deployed. When you deploy, you make some extra money. If you have a family, you get separation pay. You usually get some sort of hazardous duty pay, depending on where you're located. And it's all tax-free while you're deployed as well. And you pay for nothing when you're there. You're living on a base in tents or in like these, they call them cans. It looks like a shipping container, basically. That's what I lived in. And you eat at the chow hall every day, and you have pretty much zero personal expense while you're over there. So I came home with a huge amount of money to seed my real estate investments. Now, there's a big joke about young Marines coming home from deployments and buying the coolest, like souped up truck they can find. And it's funny because it does happen a lot, but you come home with money that you can really deploy and put to good use for your future. So if you're active and you're deploying, that's absolutely something I think that people should look into. How are you going to put that money to use for the longer term instead of just a cool truck? Not that there's anything wrong with that if you want that also, but think about the long term. And then, of course, when you buy real estate as a veteran or active duty, you can use the VA loan. So that's a 0% down loan that you can get. You do have to live in the house if you're going to use a VA loan, but everyone knows about house hacking now. That's a huge trend, and so many people are benefiting from it. So whether it's that someone's buying a house at their current duty station and they're going to bring a few fellow service members in as roommates to pay for the mortgage for them, or they're buying a duplex or a 4-family, you can house hack these things. And I think you only have to stay there for a year to be able to house hack with a VA loan. And then you can move on and you can use more of that VA loan sometimes. I don't know exactly how that works because I've only used it on one house at a time, but I believe that you can. Or you could refinance something to be able to use the VA loan again. But there's so many benefits, financial and otherwise. And I just think every veteran should be looking at it for sure.
If you could go back to being active, right, in the Marine Corps, would you have started investing earlier with that stuff?
Yeah,
knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I mean, I say that all the time. I wish I had done that. I wish I had house hacked at the duty stations that I was at. But then again, right now my entire portfolio is here in St. Louis. I know St. Louis well. I can tell before I even look it up on Rentometer what I think the rent's going to be when it's time to renew a lease or put it out, list it for rent. I know it so well, and I can manage it myself with my small team. So there's that benefit of being here versus having things all over the place. But I do know people who have done that, they started in the Marine Corps and they bought a house at every duty station. And by the time they left the military, they already had 6 or 7 places that were doing really well. And it's in a place where there's constant demand because there are always service members going through these bases where they were stationed and needing to rent a place. So I think it's a brilliant idea, and I do wish I had done it.
I mean, knowing what you know now, like we have the Scott Air Force Base is right over here. We have Fort Leonard is just down the street. Like, have you thought about buying any of those places?
I haven't, and that is one of my few examples of remaining focused. I've stayed very focused on St. Louis, areas that I can drive to within 20 to 30 minute stops, and long-term rentals as well. I played with short-term one time. And then COVID hit and I said, nope, I switched it right back to a long-term. And I'm not saying I wouldn't look at any of these things, but like we spoke about earlier, focus is important. And I think the reason that my portfolio runs pretty smoothly and I'm able to have a VA run the vast majority of the day-to-day stuff for me is because I'm very focused on a certain geographic area and on long-term rentals.
Cool. So if we use our terms that we talked about, our themes for the year, so if you had this dream, this vision for this year, kind of for your life, what would you say that is?
Oh gosh, for this year and for my life, obviously big differences because there's a lot of life ahead. This year, I have a few key objectives. Now that I am focused full-time on real estate, I don't have a sign company that I'm also running. I'll continue to build my rental portfolio, but also do some of the more active things like flipping and wholesaling. I've done that in the past. I think it's a great thing to do to be able to have both the passive and the active income from real estate, especially when you're full-time in it. So I'll do a little bit more of that this year. And then my friend and business partner, Mindy, and I have also launched a YouTube channel where we're really looking to kind of continue the work that we do with our St. Louis Wire meetup and put educational content out there it's for anyone really, but it's kind of aimed at women in real estate and just helping them have another resource for learning as they're figuring out this journey. It's interesting to see how the questions when you're starting out in real estate or when you're in your first few years of real estate, they don't really change. The questions that we're hearing from women at this meetup are the same questions we had 5, 6, 7 years ago as we were starting. And we felt like we could continue to add value in other ways as well. So we have a YouTube channel called Yellow Bricks that we're launching this year. So that's this year. Yellow Bricks, yes.
So like follow the Yellow Brick Road?
Yeah. Building your path to financial freedom, time freedom, all those good things.
Excellent. Just note that I'm inclusive. I accept girls and boys.
Yep, of course. Everyone's welcome. You just might hear us say, hey girl, how's it going?
Hey girl. It's all right. So now going back, because you are a confident, you do have that determination, that drive, right? Mm-hmm. So, you have that dominant characteristic, right? Mm-hmm. So what would you say was the forging period in your life? Like that big part where you had to dig down and go like, you know what? I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be this person. Like, was there a moment that the pressure was on and you could have folded and that instead you dug down and you're like, you know what? I'm going to dig down deeper. I'm going to forge myself to become this person that I know I was made to be. Did you have a moment like that anywhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think I've had plenty of those moments, but I think I was just very, very fortunate to be brought up by two people who, my parents are actually divorced, could not be more different in so many ways, but they both shared very, very strong sense of self, calm in the face of chaos, the ability to navigate uncertain situations and just figure it out and keep pushing forward. So I think I was taught from a very early age. I mean, we were moving all the time. My dad would deploy for 6 months at a time. My mom would be home alone, essentially a single mom for 6 months at a time with 3 little girls. And I remember her fixing appliances around the house and literally putting my baby sister in one of those like kid backpacks with like little earphones over her ears so she could mow the lawn, because me and my other sister, she could trust us to kind of play in the house while she did that, but she couldn't leave the baby. She had no other options. We didn't, at the time when we were that little, there wasn't really enough money to be hiring some company to come and do this. So yeah, she'd go out in the back with my baby sister in a backpack and some little things over her ears so it wouldn't hurt her ears, and she'd mow the lawn while my dad was gone. And I don't remember either of my parents complaining. You know, I don't remember either one of them, like, sure, they'd vent every once in a while, but I don't remember them complaining or being like, woe is me, or just stopping in their tracks because they just couldn't figure out what to do next. They both were just always, okay, well, what's another option? What's the next step? How do we get through this part? And I think we got a lot of opportunity as kids to practice that as well, because we were moving every 2 to 3 years. You had to kind of reinvent your life and figure out your life every few years. And then, of course, when I was joining the Marine Corps, the reason I wanted to join was because I wanted to test myself. I wanted to see if I could do that. And officer candidate school and those summers, those fun quote unquote summer camps that I spent in Quantico, Virginia, those were pretty good tests. You know, it was very different from anything I'd ever been through. And they really, really try to set it up so that you feel like you have very little control, very little power, not a whole lot of sleep. You're kind of achy and tired the entire time, and you still have to problem solve and figure it out. And of course, you're not complaining to them there. So I think I was very fortunate to be brought up with it, to have amazing examples from both my parents. And then the Marine Corps was really the first testing ground for me as an adult to see that I could do that myself as well.
Terrific. That's awesome. I hear, you know, some of these, you think of David Goggins and whatnot going through buds and all these other things. And if we're talking about a balanced life and whatever, all that stuff, he is not balanced in his life at all, right?
Right.
You know, and I know some people love David Goggins, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if you take the same characteristics that I told earlier, like every relationship he's had kind of has failed. He's, you know, family doesn't really listen to his kids or have, you know, pay attention to them. It's all about David's mind over physical. And he's done some amazing things, but it's like at the cost of all these other relationships. So, I mean, you got to look at some of those and go, what is success? So again, done some awesome stuff, not living a balanced life. And I don't think he cares. So, I mean, fair for him.
Right.
So you talk about distractions. You've talked about shiny object syndrome, SOS. What is on your docket here to finish? Because it looks like you've done a pretty good job of building up a portfolio. You've built up a brand, which is part of your background. You have these live events where you get to teach and train people how to do stuff, which it's got to feel great. It does feel great. I could tell you that. So what is on your docket to get done this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think with my word of the year being persistence, it's really just to focus on continuing to build those things. So I'm trying not to start, I mean, obviously the YouTube channel is new, but it's an offshoot of the fact that we've been doing this through real estate meetups. So I'm trying not to start anything completely new. I want to continue to build my real estate portfolio, but everything I have right now is 2 and 4 family buildings. So I would like to scale up. I'm looking for a 16 to 30 unit this year. Just one. I just want one. I don't need to buy 14 of them. I just want one, but with a higher unit count. I'll do some of the active stuff I mentioned, like wholesaling and flipping along the way, which I've done in the past. So I'll just continue to build on that since it was quiet the last few years with the sign company. And then, the meetups and the YouTube channel. I think if I can continue to do something each and every day toward each of those 3 goals, I will be bettering myself, my financial picture for myself and my children, my community, the things that I can give back to other people and especially other women who are looking to do things like this. And I will be really happy with how 2025 has turned out.
Terrific. So why are you doing a YouTube channel, not a podcast? With our friends here at Doorward.
Well, mostly because I didn't think I could compete with you guys.
Well done.
No, I think we talked about both. I think YouTube, I'm a very visual learner. And so I think YouTube is going to give us the opportunity to involve some kind of more visual teaching that should be interesting, and some storytelling too. I mean, storytelling happens, in audio ways and in visual ways, of course, but I think it's interesting to kind of get into kind of the visual side of it and filming different things. We go out and just get B-roll sometimes when I'm walking properties. I'll just start filming what's happening around me. And I think that's very informational and instructive to people when they can kind of see with their own 2 eyes. It's harder. You don't get to just flip it on every time you're in the car. You can't watch it as you drive to work, but I'm hoping that it'll be a value add for all of our listeners.
Terrific.
Yeah.
If you could go back and give advice to, say, a younger version of Megan or another young woman getting into the space or any of the things that you've gone through, what would be some advice you'd give?
Gosh, I think it all really does boil down to confidence and mindset. Mindset as a whole, and then your confidence, especially as a woman. I think I run into a lot of women who, unfortunately, they feel like they don't have the confidence because it does tend to be a more male-dominated field, or maybe they've been stay-at-home moms and they want to do this to further their family, but they feel like, well, I haven't been in the workforce, or whatever the reason is. I think many women lack confidence, and they shouldn't. There's so many things that you do day in and day out that are transferable skills. When I was leaving the Marine Corps, I'd been in the Marine Corps, like how do you go from that type of life to the civilian sector? Well, there are transferable skills. You always have to look at what it is you've already done, look back at your accomplishments, whether they're directly related or not, and say, okay, if I did that, then this is why I think I can also do this. I'll have to learn some new skills. I'll have to learn new vocabulary, but I can do this also. So having that positive mindset, building your confidence, and then exuding that confidence, I think is so important too. I feel like when I speak to women, I often get asked questions about how do you handle when you're going into a bank and, it's all men around the table and they're looking at you, or you're talking to other investors and it's all men. And I say, well, I just don't think about that part. That when you're focused on being the only woman in the room, that's what your mind is focused on, instead of the good interaction with the people around you, instead of talking through the numbers that backward and forward because you did your homework. So I think confidence is so, so important. And part of that too is just trusting your gut. And there are plenty of examples I could give when I just did not trust my gut. And I look back and I think, God, that was a missed opportunity, all because I was second guessing myself. And I knew that it would have been fine if I had gone for that deal, or if I had tried that new way of doing things. But I second guessed myself and I didn't do it. So confidence and trusting your gut, I think, find the people around you who can help you do that if you're struggling with it, because you can do it.
That's awesome. From my standpoint, you look like you're put together and very diligent about a lot of things, which makes it curious when you're like, I have distractions, where I think with your background, I think you've become quite diligent about many of your activities.
Yeah.
What kind of books do you read, Megan?
Gosh, I like a lot of personal development type things, but something I got into a few years ago, and I find more and more of my reading is going in this direction, is Stoicism. So it's a philosophy. It's kind of all about understanding. I think it boils down to, you need to know what's within your control and what's not within your control. And there's very little that's actually within our control in this life, right? We always think there's so much in our control, and we're working so hard to kind of fix things that we think aren't going the way that they should. And many times we're just kind of beating ourselves over the head trying to do that. The thing that's really within our control is our mind, our mindset, how we react to the things that happen around us day in and day out, how people respond to us, the world events, all of those things. So I started reading, I actually read Ryan Holiday. There's a lot of source stuff, Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. And I don't read as much of that just because Ryan Holiday has really done so much of that homework and then rewritten it all in ways that it's really digestible for today's reader, and for just this day and age. So I love reading. I do the Daily Stoic every single day. I read that day's page in the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. And then I read several of his other books, like The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy, Stillness is Key. Right now I'm reading a book. I just started it last night called The Surrender Experiment, which I'm only a few chapters in, but it feels very much, it's kind of Buddhist Zen, very similar to Stoicism as well. So yeah, I think the further along I go, I started reading a ton of real estate and personal finance books, and I'll still read some of those here and there, or business books. But the further I go, the more and more I focus on mindset. And I think it's something just like working out. I enjoy working out and staying fit. And unfortunately, you can't do that once and stay fit. You can't even do it once a week and really be that healthy. It needs to be a consistent, constant. I believe, personally, I try to do it every single day. So it's one of my, I've started calling them non-negotiables. I move every single day. I read something for my mindset every single day. I try to write or journal in some way, even if it's just logging the things that I've done for the day and tracking what I'm doing well. Journal every single day. And those are the things that I think it just gets your foundation right. So that's what I'm reading.
Well, when I started this, I was really thinking of the Miracle Morning,
yes,
and the savers aspect. And then you started saying all those things. I'm like, oh, that sounds good.
Yep.
Talking about mindset and all that stuff. I used to quote Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yep.
I use that one a lot just because it's one of those like, oh man, I'm about to do blank.
Yes.
And it's like, oh man, I'm scared. I'm going to fail.
Yep.
Well, guess what? With that attitude, you will.
Yep.
Or think you'll do good and do good.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that pretty awesome. So I read Proverbs because I feel like that's tangible, probably the most stoic side of what I think is in like Bible type stuff. But I find a lot of peace about that. I actually got the Marcus Aurelius one you had, so I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of peace about that. So give me an example where you actually used that in, was there a deal that was going sideways? Maybe inspection period was going, a stress. Tell me a story where like stress was going on and you went back to those principles and it got you through it.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, in real estate, it happens all the time. It's common. It's frequent. In life in general, it happens all the time. I think I found Stoicism and started reading some of these books a few years ago when I was working on a project. I had bought a 4-family and it was my first time bringing a partner on. So he was a private money lender. I had just used most of my liquid capital to start the sign company, but I still wanted to be investing. And my private money lender was willing to partner with me on this property, which made it easier for me to get into it. I didn't have to bring as much money down, and we were going to be 50-50 tenant in common partners, and we still are. But this was a very rocky project. I felt so bad that it was his first project on the ownership side. But, I was doing all the work. It was just that I had to give him these updates. And I think that was the hardest part of all, was when you have to tell someone the bad news and it's not just your problem, it's also theirs. But we bought this 4-family. As you know, a lot of the multifamily stock in St. Louis is pretty old. It's this beautiful brick building. And it's just off Kings Highway over by SLU High School. And so it's pretty good area. It's really close to hospitals and everything. And we walked it. I bought it from a wholesaler, very knowledgeable wholesaler who I trust I would buy from again. They didn't notice it. I walked it with my contractor because we were going to be renovating all 4 units and just kind of bringing them up to speed, mostly cosmetic renovations. He didn't notice it. I walked it with an actual inspector. We had an inspection done. He didn't notice it. I didn't notice it. The top front of the building, it's a brick building, so there's multiple layers of brick, looks straight and flush and beautiful. But we knew that the lintels over the windows were rusting, so we were going to have to pull those out and replace them. It was part of the budget, we knew. When the mason company comes to take out the brick and take those lintels out to replace them, they see that the inner layer of brick is bowing inward. And long story short, this was a $13,000 hit to the budget that we were not expecting. So, I think that was just one of those examples where like panic can set in and you can really start to freak out. And I knew I had to call my partner right away and talk with him about it. I really didn't want to, but I knew I had to. But I think when you just stop and take a step back and say, okay, is this going to kill me? No. Am I going to end up homeless and living under a bridge? No. Will I completely ruin, everything I've built thus far? No. This is one difficult project, but it's not going to ruin me. So calm down and just figure out what solutions are. Well, fortunately, we were kind of going through units one by one as we were renovating them. And the fourth unit was not yet done. We had a tenant in there who I knew she would really love to stay, but I didn't know if she was going to be ready to pay the rent that we'd have, the much increased rent on the renovated units. So I proposed to my partner that we put in a washer and dryer for her in that unit. Don't really touch anything else. That basically recouped the money that we needed to spend on completely rebuilding that front brick wall and increase her rent a little bit, not quite as much as we'd hoped. So, when you stop, calm down, remind yourself it's not the end of the world, practice some stoicism, you can focus on solutions instead of panic. So that's what we did in that case, and it's worked out well. That one tenant loves it. She's stayed there for several years since. I think she'll continue to stay there for a while. And the property cash flows, despite all those issues up front and all the scares, it's doing just fine.
Awesome. Good example.
Yeah.
I think it is interesting. So do you swing a hammer on any of your projects?
Oh, no. No, I don't. I'll mess something up.
So I got in because I was the guy swinging a hammer. So like, that's what I thought you had to do. No one else explained that you didn't have to do that. So I look at people that are line item contractors, like investors, where it's like new hot water heater, $1,500 it costs, or whatever the number is nowadays. You know what I mean? Like it's where for me, it's like, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. Here's our scope of work. Shit went down, right? The wall is bowing. We got to redo it. I mean, you were able to dodge and weave. Like for me, it's like, okay, well, we'll fix this, but now we're going to do X, Y, Z. Like here's by having a bigger view of it. It's like, okay, we were going to build a retaining wall, scratch that. We're going to do this now instead. Just having a more of a not rigid look at it. You got to be flexible and kind of in the moment with how to deal with some of this stuff. Cool. I like that.
I think just this morning I was watching a video where this woman was speaking about the most mentally healthy people that exist. They've kind of been studying this a little bit, and flexibility and adaptability are the key indicators of a healthy psyche, of good mental health, because there is so much that comes at all of us in life, in relationships, in business, in whatever. And it's the people who can, you're on a trip and things don't go as you think they're going to go, and a flight gets canceled. If you're mentally inflexible, you throw your hands up and you cry and you say everything's ruined, and then your vacation is just a waste. If you're mentally flexible, you say, well, what could we do in this city instead? Or is there a train that could get us there? Or what other adventure could we figure out here? And you end up having fun anyway, maybe more fun than you would have on the initial trip. So I think that this stuff, we talk about it in the sense of business, but it applies to just living your life in general, having fun with friends, travel, how you interact with your children. Mental flexibility, I think, is key. It's huge. And I like to practice it as much as I can.
All right. So if you're going on a trip, say with your family, friends, whatever, how much do you plan super detailed and how much are you just ad lib?
It depends on who I'm traveling with for sure. But people call me crazy, but I've been taking my children outside of the country since they were like 3 months old, 6 months old. I love travel. I lived abroad as a kid. It's like a goal for me to get out of the country at least once a year, if not more. So I can kind of go either way, but often if it's up to me, I will say, okay, we're going to this place. We know the location we're going to and where we're staying. And here's a few things I'd like to do at some point while we're there. I have kind of the key few things, but then I also leave time to just kind of wander it and explore. And I leave time for if the outdoor thing we wanted to do ends up being on a rainy day, there's another day you can switch it to. So yeah, I'm in between. I always have a few things on my mind, but I don't overly plan it or structure it. And I love the time where you just kind of wander and sit at a cafe or in a park or whatever the case may be, and just kind of take it all in.
Very similar.
Yeah.
We once went on a vacation with very structured friends, and it was like, we're doing this for this period of time, this for this, and I was like, I don't want to. Like, I want to like sit down. I want to just meander. Like, I didn't know how much. So I love having structure in my own diligence, but I think it's also part of that freedom side. Once you have that, it's like, I kind of want to do what I want to do, not what someone else tells me to do.
Not to mention, there's just all these interesting adventures that you can happen upon that you never would have otherwise. I was just in Puerto Rico last week with a friend, and we went.
My wife was too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was in Punta Cana.
Oh, that's
Dominican.
That's the Dominican Republic.
Apologies.
Yeah,
another island right next to you.
Very close. They're neighbors. I was in Old San Juan, and my friend and I we were on this very loud street. So there's like music playing all night. So I think we just kind of were sleeping later than usual and woke up earlier than expected. We're like, you know what, let's just throw on our workout clothes and let's just go wander. Let's go walk. And we started walking before it was even light out. And we ended up walking 9 miles all around, just checking things out. We found out that they've got this huge running culture, like huge workout culture. I cannot tell you how many people were out running that morning. We're like, we feel bad that we're not running. Should we start running? It was amazing how many people were just out enjoying the beautiful weather and being healthy and active. Nothing on the island seemed to open before 8 a.m., but there was this like one little coffee cart over by the water that we found. So we were able to get our early morning coffee at one point. We sat on the rocks by the water and noticed some of the animals in the area. It was great. Nothing about it was planned. It all happened because it was really loud on our street and it woke us up. But we had a great time. I think it was one of my favorite parts of the trip.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And Jake, you went through, so my life roadmap, one of the exercises is the perfect day, where you write out all these things that you're doing with no concept of time or money, or, you could just do anything. Mm-hmm. And in mine, I was meandering, like walking around, and just like, I remember doing that. I wrote down some other parts where I'm a big game player, like to play games. And like there was I had a table big enough for all these friends and family to sit down, and we'd eat and play games and enjoy it. And then like without knowing it, like we started having those events at our house. Like, people would come over and eat and play games. And, it's just one of those, like how much the mindset really does map it out. But you just underlined part of my perfect day, which is that idea of just exploring and just seeing who are you going to bump into, what divine appointment are you going to have, or just kind of, I find so much joy in that. Like my wife doesn't always like me grocery shopping because I'm a little bit more open with the buying, but I love it because you don't know who you're going to bump into, and you meet new friends, and I think it's sweet.
Yeah.
All right. So do you invite your boy to your girl events?
Neither one of them come yet, but they should. My daughter's selling cookies this year. Last year, she was the lead saleswoman in the troop. She sold like 261 boxes, which means that she was very good at delegating to mom.
I was like, I think I know how this works. Dear networking group, you must buy at least 20 boxes each.
And then, so she decided this year that her goal is to sell 300 boxes. So it's like, all right, yep. Well, but it's so cute. She gets so excited about it. And there's this little app. Of course, everything's digital now, so it's nice. You can just throw something up on social media or send the link to family and friends via text. It makes it a lot easier. We'll still do door to door because I want her to have that experience. We talk a lot about rejection. We talk about supply and demand. We talk about these things at home. Not in an overly structured way, but as it comes up, So it was funny. My mom texted me the other day because my daughter wanted to talk to her. So they were on the phone for a little bit. And afterwards I said, okay, what did you guys talk about? What was going on? And she goes, oh, well, we were talking about supply and demand and that Isla wants to start a business. I was like, Isla brought up supply and demand? She's like, yeah, that girl's going to do things. And I'm glad. I'm excited for her. And it's fun to see her, even though mom spends a lot of time on it too. It's fun to see both my children, of course, but my daughter's the older one. So she's more into these things now where she's in Girl Scouts and selling cookies and setting goals. And it's pretty exciting.
So talking about your kids really makes me think about the future, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about, like I'm thinking legacy, like what do you want Megan Greathouse, which by the way, great name to be in real estate.
Right.
Like, did you plan that where you're like, I'm going to keep this name. Like,
I definitely did not plan it, but I'm definitely keeping it. Everyone knows me by that at this point. So, yeah.
But what do you think your legacy is going to be for yourself, for your kids, for this community that you built? What do you think your legacy? What are you leaving for everybody?
You know, it's interesting because I think one of the things that I've run into in reading Stoicism, and I very much enjoy it, is like not even to think or worry about the legacy that much. I mean, everyone, at some point, everyone dies. And then at some point after that, everyone who knew you also dies. And this planet and this universe has been around for so incredibly long, and we are just the speck on the journey. So really what I want to do is make the most of my very small amount of time here. The only resource I can't renew is time. So I really want to make the most of that time. I want to teach my children to do the same with their limited time. I want to inspire people around me to do the same with their limited time. And I don't know how far that will live past when I live, but I hope that I know I'm having a lot of fun. I enjoy life. I travel a lot. I have hobbies. I have great friends. I have beautiful children. I have a cool business that stresses me out, but it helps me practice Stoicism and learn how to keep pushing forward. So I'm having a great time, and I just really want to see other people do the same. So I hope that my example can help them do that and not fear it too, because I think we talk about fearing doing things professionally and in your business, but people fear all sorts of things. They fear love. They fear travel. They fear taking the time and the money to go after an interesting hobby. There's so many fears that are stopping us from all sorts of experiences we want to have in this life. And I think life really boils down to quality experience with great people. That's what I want from life. So I hope other people will join me in that.
Excellent. Well, Megan, you've been a great guest here. If somebody wants to follow you either on socials or in person, like, where would they go?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Instagram. You can find me at Megan_great_houses. Megan is MEGAN. And then the YouTube channel that we're just launching, it's new this year, is called Yellow Bricks. So you can find us on YouTube talking about real estate and, well, you know, everything from kind of the more aspirational stuff and lifestyle aspect of it to the nitty-gritty details of how to do different things.
Fantastic. Megan, thank you so much for being here, and have a great 2025.
Thank you.